Business athletes, what is going on? Bringing another truly impactful episode to you today. This one is a really serious one. Obviously, they're all serious. They're all good. But this one, I think, is going to hit home for a lot of you guys, a lot of you. And it's around lowering cancer risk, sleep, stress, and metabolic health. Basically, if I wanted to lower my cancer risk, here's what I would do. So, first of all, I'll caveat this discussion by saying this is not medical advice. Please do your own due diligence. Everything I say here is just my opinion. Consult your specialist and do your own research. But use as much of this as you can, knowing that I've done a lot of research and learning and studying over the years. I've had people in my own family that have had cancer. I've had students that have had cancer. In fact, I want to start by telling you a little story just to preface this. For anyone who's dealing with this, or even if you don't, I would also tell you, even if you don't have cancer, absolutely don't skip this episode. Don't you want to have every tool in the tool belt to make sure that you never get it? That's why I'm so fascinated by it. I want to have as many insurance policies and as many buffers in place as possible so I never get that dreaded news. Recently, a few days ago, the lead singer from the old band 3 Doors Down, I believe his name is Brad Arnold. At the time of the recording of this podcast, he died of cancer. And he was, I think, 47 years old. 47. It's crazy to think that life can be cut so short. But there is a lot of good stuff that you can do. There's a lot of levers you can pull. There are so many good tactics. I've seen miracles happen. I truly have. I'll share this with you really quick, and then we'll dive into tactics, tools, and concepts. So, a few years ago, I had a student come to me. They'll remain anonymous, but they are open about their journey. They share it. And he came to me, and he basically got a cancer diagnosis. And at the time, I forget exactly what type it was. It was one that was growing sort of in his muscle tissue, but it was up against the bone in his shoulder and arm. And I remember he came to me because at the time I was talking about essentially optimizing immune system. If someone's immune system is challenged or if they have other health issues outside of just, looking jacked, what do you do? What levers can you pull? What tactics do you have at your disposal? And I said to him, look, man, I've had family members that have had cancer before, and we've thrown many amazing protocols at this, and we're able to get a really positive outcome. And he said, right, well, let's do it. I'm willing to do what you tell me to do. And I said, good, because you're going to be doing some nice and sauna detox protocols. You're going to be doing some intermittent fasting protocols. You're going to be doing some juice fasting and everything between. And he followed the direction. And he went along with these processes. Like I said, I'm going to map these things out for you. But we were doing a nice and sauna detox protocol by a Harvard doctor called Dr. Yu. And I'm going to talk more about that in this conversation. He did a bunch of sort of strategic intermittent fasting. We also did some juice fasting. And we used a couple of different juicing recipes that are very, very anti-cancerous and have a lot of good mechanisms of action that can help you in general. One of the things that I want you guys to know that even with these suggestions, many of them would be ideal if you just want to optimize your health in general. That's the beautiful thing about this. Don't think of these things as, I'll keep them handy when I get cancer, and then I'll add them in. don't think like that. What I would tell you is what principles and what concepts can you add in now and lay down that foundation now. So that's a big part of this. This will apply to you if you just want to like optimize your health and truly become that business athlete, period. And the benefit, the bonus point is you don't get freaking cancer. Because let's face it, cancer is just prevalent now. And I'm going to be talking about why I believe that is. But this gentleman came to me, and I basically threw a bunch of tactics at him. We totally overhauled his diet. We really dialed in his sleep hygiene. I gave him some strategic juicing recipes, and we really pushed this whole juice fasting protocol. So bouts of intermittent fasting stacked in with different types of, like essentially juice cleansing, and a range of different supplements. And like I said, the diet was very fine-tuned, and he had a surgery scheduled, and they were going to basically go in and amputate his entire arm from above the shoulder joint. Just imagine that. Imagine knowing that this is spreading and it's bad enough that if they don't cut it out right now, it might metastasize into his bones. And so they're going to cut it out and above the shoulder joint, which means that he's not going to have the ability to put like a prosthetic on the joint and actually move it, which is, that's really unfortunate. And obviously he's getting mentally prepared for this. You know, it's a spiritual journey. It's a moment where you realize that your mortality is right in front of you. And he was bracing for it, and we've been talking about it because I was still giving him protocols and feedback, but they have to lock the surgery in ahead of time. So even if he had every intention of doing all these health things and it worked, he can't just sit back and wait on that. He's got to lock the surgery in like ahead of time because it's a whole thing. You need the anesthesiologist, you need the surgeons. Like they can't just show up on a Monday if you give them a call on a Friday. This is like weeks and weeks and weeks in advance. And they did one last biopsy and scan the couple of days before his surgery was set. So at this point, the surgery's set. He's going to go in, he's going to do it. And they did one last scan and biopsy. And I will never forget this moment where he comes out and I get a message from him. And he basically said, I don't need to have the surgery. And I'm like, why is that? And he said, they ran the test and the cancer is basically dead. The cells are dead. It's not even active. And I was just like, man, I don't even know what to say. Like a God moment. And he starts choking up, realizing that God moment had touched him. And from that point on, avoiding losing his arm, not losing his life, it really made me understand the power of prayer, but also the power of all these lifestyle levers that we pull. The power of nutrition. It's why I'm such a big advocate for diet and blood work and all the things. Because I've literally seen it save people's life. That's what we're dealing with here. So I share this with you, knowing that if you are going through a season like that, you can write that story too. 100% you can. But you got to show up, and I need you to pay close attention to this podcast, this discussion, the things we're going to be diving into in this episode, because we're going to be going through a range of stuff. So essentially, if I was going to tell you everything that we'll be going through as a summary. We're going to be covering diet, nutrition, blood work, environmental factors, heavy metal burden, detox pathways, sleep hygiene, stress mitigation and chronic stress, immune system function, mitochondria, movement, light, and adjunctive supplements, different types of supplements, bioregulator, peptides, that type of stuff. So we're going to break it down. And I will tell you, you will have a lot of options at your disposal. That's the good thing to realize. And you don't have to do all of these things, but I think having these tools in the tool belt is going to help you a lot. So the first thing I wanted to touch on was, and let me just grab a drink quickly. The first thing I wanted to touch on was blood work and early detection markers. So one of the things that I think is really just valuable to know is part of you getting blood work done each year almost acts like an early detection system. That's why it's so useful. Because obviously you can optimize the blood work and you can get in great shape and the whole business athlete type concept, and you're looking awesome, you're a walking billboard, etc. But I also think there's something to be said about looking at those early detection markers, which I'm going to be giving you a breakdown on, and really looking at the different pieces of the puzzle when it comes to your blood work to discern what is going on chemically in your body, what's happening with your inflammation, and everything else. So, the things that I think are valuable to know. First of all, I would just say running a complete comprehensive lab panel where you're getting everything run is going to be a great investment. I would tell anyone, do a full complete panel at least once a year. Ideally, every 6 months is even better, because that's going to act like that master key, that roadmap of what's going to get you to that point A to point Z in the most strategic fashion possible. So, blood markers. First thing, fasting insulin, hemoglobin A1C, C-reactive protein, or HS-CRP, ferritin, vitamin D, homocysteine, omega-3 index. What I would tell you is that it's worth getting everything run. For example, and by the way, prostate cancer is very prevalent in men. I forget the statistics, but it's very common. It's too common. And I'm going to be talking about some of the mechanisms around why this stuff is happening and how likely it is that you might run into issues too. Again, theorizing based off all my knowledge and information. So take it with a grain of salt, but this will be useful for you. It will be. Now, I would also say that getting your immune system markers, when you get blood work done, you're going to get a lot of immune system markers run as well. Most of the time, those markers are kind of pointless. Because unless you have a cold or a flu, those markers are typically going to be normal. So, and generally speaking, if someone has like a flu, I tell them, don't go get your blood work done when you have a flu. Because all the inflammation is going to be sky high. It's going to skew all the data. It's going to look terrible. But what you'll find is that if you do have some type of issue, early stage cancer or even later stage, and this is where your body will pick this up early if you're proactive about this. So, because the most cancers are survivable, but it's the stage that people discover them that's the issue. They don't, where it'd be colon cancer, but it's like full-blown stage 4, or pancreatic cancer, full-blown stage 4 before they react. And at that point, it's very, very challenging. So early detection is freaking key. Now, the immune system markers like lymphocytes, monocytes, basophils, there's all these immune system markers that you will run as a standard part of your panel. So you don't have to try to remember all of these things, but just know that, generally speaking, even with insurance, they'll run a bunch of immune system markers. And you'll see it says like lymphocytes and basophils and different things like that. That can be elevated if you're having issues with early stage cancer. So, for example, if someone came to me and they had their immune system, their antibody markers high, and I said to them, hey, did you have a cold or a flu when you got this blood work done? And they said, well, no, I didn't. What we would do is we would rerun the test. So I would say, look, and if they said, yeah, I had a flu, then I would just kind of disregard those metrics for now, because realizing that those inflammation markers are going to be elevated if you have some type of cold or flu. So you may even not necessarily feel it, but your body's picking up on it. That's the key. So I would say, okay, those immune system markers are elevated. Let's go and retest to see if it was just an anomalous reading. And you go get them rerun again, and let's say they're still elevated or even more elevated. That's when I'd start to probe deeper into further detailed testing. There's a test, I believe it's called Gallery, Gallery. I think Gallery, like art gallery, but the Y is an I at the end. I believe that's one that is a good test worth doing. From what I remember, you have to go through like a certified physician. A lot of these doctors will have these tests at their disposal, but Gallery is one to look at, and that early detection is key. So if your immune system markers are elevated, that's when you go run these more comprehensive tests to get some type of, you basically at that point need some type of diagnosis or confirmation. Now let's say you have had confirmation, or you are just wanting to be very proactive and treat this episode like an insurance policy, which I think is a great idea. That's the way I approach all of this stuff. It's worth, like I said, getting fasting insulin, hemoglobin A1C, and fasting glucose run, because very often what you'll find is that if someone has a degree of insulin resistance, so your insulin levels are a bit high. Now what that means is that your body isn't great at processing sugar, and so that sugar sits in your bloodstream, and it basically just sort of starts inflaming and irritating everything. Now, what have you heard out there in the health world around cancer as it relates to sugar? Right? You probably hear things like that the cancer feeds off sugar. Well, that's part of it. So it's not the full picture, though. Like I said, I'm going to give you some theories around how and why I think this stuff is happening, so you can better be prepared for like what to avoid and what to focus on. But the first thing is that with fasting insulin, hemoglobin A1C or HbA1c, that's going to give you an idea of how insulin resistant you are. If you have insulin resistance and your body's not great at processing those sugars, I would go listen to the episode that I did on insulin resistance and insulin sensitivity. I did a whole episode on that. I want you to go listen to that, because I will summarize it in this discussion with you as well. But I delve deep into metabolism and insulin resistance in that episode, talking about diet, talking about different types of supplements, different types of adaptogens, berberine, different tools to become very, very insulin sensitive, because that is absolutely vital. My profile in terms of blood work and sort of health metrics is very, very good because I walk so much. I'm very, very insulin sensitive. And because you're the muscle mass, it makes you more insulin sensitive. So again, that's part of what we want to focus on. Another part is, like I said, C-reactive protein, or hsCRP. That's basically like a systemic inflammation marker. So think of any disease or ailment as like a form of inflammation. And each, depending on where it is in the body, it might have a different sort of metastasis. So like whether it is Alzheimer's or dementia or anxiety or depression or low hormone levels, or some type of autoimmune disease, rheumatoid arthritis, all the way to cancers, they're all a form of inflammation. And they're essentially aggravating and inflaming the body in some way, shape, or form. So what I find is that you've got to make sure that you're paying attention to inflammation markers like C-reactive protein, because you want to get that as low as possible. So I tell people the average range for normal is between 1 and 3. But remember, like we always say, normal does not constitute optimal. And in fact, in many cases, normal sucks. So we want you to be below 1, ideally as low and close to 0 as possible. I would want to see you between 0.2 and 0.5. That would be fantastic. If you are 1 plus, we've still got some work that we can do, which is a good thing. It's shining light on the areas that you can improve. Other markers, like I said, vitamin D, because vitamin D is a precursor hormone that has an intimate role in boosting immune system function. Think about this. In winter, why do we get sick more often? Do you think it's because colds are seasonal and they just come out in winter? Or do you think it's because we get less vitamin D exposure from the sun, and that dip in vitamin D then starts to tank our immune system, and that's what drives the issues? Like when that immune system is weak and compromised, that's when you run into issues. So we really want to do everything we can to bolster the immune system and not make it overactive, like with an autoimmune disease, but we want to make it strong and very responsive. That's the key. Now, other things like I mentioned, whether it be homocysteine or uric acid, again, generally, those are known as inflammation markers. So we're basically just running different things in the body to get an assessment of where is your inflammation at. And we want those things as low as possible. So I would definitely tell you that not only is detailed blood work very good for just optimizing sex hormones and thyroid and insulin sensitivity and brain chemistry and like your focus, your mood, your mental health, anxiety, all that stuff. It's good for all of that. But it's particularly good at picking up early stage issues and good for digging into where the inflammation is happening. Like what is some of the root causes of this issue? So that's the first thing. So comprehensive blood work, you've got to get that done. See, I think it was episode 3 was on detailed blood work. So go listen to that one first. Now, the next thing that I want to touch on is your metabolic environment. Your metabolic environment. That is essentially diet and nutrition. Because remember, food is like software, and your body and mind are the hardware. And most people, they inadvertently upload malware onto their computer. And then they wonder why the laptop is crashing and glitching and brain farting because they've put malware on their system. And remember, malware is obviously like, junk food, processed foods, inflammatory stuff, but it can also be some food sensitivities too. I've talked about this a number of times where you might be eating things that you think are good, but based off your metrics, you're having a food sensitivity, a reaction to a food that might, for the most part, be healthy. And again, it's not the saying that food will be causing the cancer, but when that inflammation goes up, it weakens the immune system. When the immune system drops, it opens the door for pathogens and all kinds of stuff to come in and start to metastasize. So basically, it reduces what's called cell senescence, where it's like your body's sort of garbage disposal. It's like as cells age and die, our body wants to go through this senescence process, which basically terminates the cell and breaks it down, and we create new ones. Whereas when that doesn't happen, that's when you get these broken cells going rogue, and they start to replicate these broken, essentially like broken DNA. And that is what the cancer cell is. And it replicates and replicates and replicates. And that's when you go from like stage 1, 2, 3, 4 onwards. So immune system is key. So metabolic environment, meaning your diet, the first thing is if you have any issues or you know someone that does, the right out of the gate, you have to reduce ultra-processed foods. One general rule of thumb is, and I would even say if you have cancer, 98% of your diet has to be foods with one ingredient. Now, obviously, if you don't have it and you just want to be like truly optimal, or maybe you know someone that has it or you have it, but you just don't feel like mentally you are even capable of eating like a truly whole food diet. First of all, I'd always tell people you've just got to believe in the power of nutrition. I've literally seen people lose their life because they just didn't believe that the diet would change anything. And that's such an unfortunate path to walk. So never let that be you. If you ever get a diagnosis, you move heaven and earth to overcome this. Don't let your diet be the reason why you couldn't. That's ridiculous. Move heaven and earth. And so the first thing is you got to clean the diet up. And I would say the rule of thumb is foods with one ingredient. You know, blueberries are just blueberries. Broccoli sprouts are just broccoli sprouts. Brown rice is just brown rice. Sweet potato is just sweet potato. And if you stack 100% of your diet with that model, that's a very good start point. It's a very good start point. Now, I will say, depending on where you're at in your journey, there will be things, it's a spectrum. So you may find that, you know, a healthier protein powder, like a superfood protein powder like Kichava, may not be a bad thing. Or maybe you just feel like you're at a point where you need a protein bar or two and you're just going to do that, but everything else is really clean. Now, obviously, I would be focusing heavily on whole foods, heavily, because like I said, remember, these foods are like an operating system update. And so whether it be antioxidants or polyphenols, different vitamins and minerals, and the effect that those things have on cellular health, all of this stuff adds up. It has a compound effect, but you've got to start. So the first thing is cleaning up the diet. This is where I also would say finding healthy food upgrades for everything. Because depending on where the person's at, let's say it's someone that you know and their diet's just been terrible. It's very challenging, especially if people like emotionally eat and they're just not a very disciplined person. It can be very challenging to just overhaul everything. Now, some people do it. Some people recognize that, man, if I don't change my habits right now, I am gone. And so they will overhaul everything. And it's impressive to see that. You know, the guy that I mentioned to you that got that feedback about the cancer cells being freaking destroyed, he did that. So he went very clean. He followed my direction word for word. There was no, oh man, I slipped up and had some Ben & Jerry's tonight. There was none of that. But what I will say is finding healthy food upgrades for those things. So it's going to be things like using like a Ninja Creamy or your Vitamix and creating like a banana ice cream, like a clean protein powder with frozen banana, and you blend that like soft serve ice cream. It might be like using Macro Mike protein baking mixes instead of your conventional baking goods. Now, again, I realize depending on where you're at with your diagnosis, depending on what you want to achieve, sometimes adding a couple of meals or some snacks in that are healthy food upgrades, but still have some sort of whole food sugars in them, that can obviously have an effect. That can be an issue. So you want it to be as whole food as possible. Now, I would say that one of the keys is you need to stabilize blood glucose levels, and we need to get you very, very insulin sensitive. This is the whole sort of concept around how cancer feeds off sugar, basically. You got to realize that it's not just that. Like, I will tell you that you're not going to be proliferating and fueling cancer if you're eating like blueberries as well. Now, in the wrong context, if you're adding a lot of other things into, that can stack on top of each other. But what I find in general is that if it's inflammatory, processed, preservative-ridden foods. Now, that insulin sensitivity, a couple of things with that. So, one, you've got to get out and walk 12 to 15,000 steps a day. I know it's hard. If you're not feeling great, that's challenging. But I will tell you, if you can get out in the light and in the sun with your shirt off or a tank top on with your sunglasses off, and you walk multiple times through the day and getting that natural light, that is a big lever to pull. It's a very big lever to pull. Now, on top of that, I would be doing a little bit of resistance training. This is where you have to be mindful, because if you do too much, like I've mentioned in other episodes, like around stress, the training can actually become a form of a stress response. So if you're already dealing with cancer and different issues in your system, and then you add a gut-busting 75 hard workout rotation 6 days a week, that's more inflammation you're creating. And so I would say in general, short, lighter workouts where you're stimulating the body, but you're not breaking the muscle down. So you're stimulating it, you're pumping the blood flow, you're pumping the circulatory system, you're maintaining strength, which is huge. And I would be focusing on that in a big way. Now, when it comes to diet, one of the things that you might have heard a lot about was ketosis, ketogenic diets, because it basically sort of strangulates sugar intake. So I would say that if I was going to give you the ultimate system that is sort of all-purpose, because I realize everyone's different and everyone responds differently to stuff. This is one of the challenging things about true health optimization, is that people respond differently to things. And so what works really well for one person may not actually be very good for another person. And I've seen this a lot. And so that's why I'm thankful you're tuning into this, because I feel like at least I can convey some general rules of thumb without making you feel like this is the law of the land. So I would say in general, doing some type of ketogenic-based approach, but it's a predominantly plant-based diet. So basically what that means is you're doing predominantly monounsaturated omega-3 based fats. So I would say that if you were going to do like a full-blown plant-based diet, it would look like tofu, tempeh as a protein, but a lot of avocado, a lot of hemp seed, whole olives, olive oil, things like that as a base. And then you'd have rainbow veg. So you'd have your microgreens, your broccoli sprouts. I would be nailing those two down every day. Broccoli sprouts are high in sulforaphane, and the broccoli microgreens are the same in many ways. And sulforaphane is a very anti-cancerous compound. You can actually supplement with it too, by the way. But I would be just pile driving broccoli sprouts and broccoli microgreens every single day without fail. Kale microgreens as well. And then that's where you start to add in a few other things. You could add in some pickled beets, some carrots. Just think in terms of all these different colors are all good operating system updates in your body, which is going to help with cellular senescence and cellular turnover and oxidative stress, oxidative damage, which is essentially what cancer is. It's inflammation. So I would be focusing on one or two things, either a Mediterranean style diet or a ketogenic-ish style plant-based protocol. One of the reasons why I love plant-based diets is because they are very, very anti-cancerous. I've been plant-based for 13 years. I don't jam it down people's throats, though, because I realize that everyone is different and everyone has to walk their path and everyone's motivated by different things. But I definitely like that bonus idea that there is a real anti-cancer component to this. And I'm going to explain a little bit why in a second, but before that, like I mentioned, either a Mediterranean style diet, so you can go to ChatGPT and pull up, give me a Mediterranean style whole food diet, and it'll give you a bit of a breakdown. It's usually things like salmon, good quality fish, sardines, that type of stuff, with your avocados and your sun-dried tomatoes and a lot of good omega-3 based fats. So olives, Blueprint extra virgin olive oil. So I'd be doing those things every day, or I would be doing like a plant-focused diet. That those two, and especially when you combine those two things together. Because most people think that a ketogenic diet is full of sausage and bacon and ghee and stuff like that. It can be, but what I found for people that have hyperlipidemia, so issues with cholesterol, it drives that through the roof. And part of the reason why like a sort of a plant-based, plant-predominant diet can be so useful is because a lot of all animal products drive up IGF-1. So insulin-like growth factor 1. IGF-1 does have its place. Now, this is a great example of how context is king. Someone might say, well, are you saying that IGF-1 is bad? And what they don't realize is that as we age, we need to make sure that our IGF-1 levels, it almost acts like a proxy for growth hormone. So as you age, if your IGF-1/growth hormone levels are low, you will age faster. You will age faster. You will lose muscle mass sooner. You'll lose bone mineral densities faster. You'll hold more body fat. You won't recover from training as proficiently. Your skin will start to break down, so you'll start to lose the collagen and elastin in your skin. So that's like that sort of old person look, where the skin's quite thin and delicate and wrinkled. You'll start to lose hair and your nails will get more brittle. So it's just a good reminder that this part of it, in terms of balancing growth hormone and IGF-1, there is a place for it. Once you hit about 35 onwards, growth hormone levels can decrease by like 12 to 20% every decade. So if you're 60, you may have lost up to 30 to 60% of your total growth hormone output. So that's why people that are older don't recover from training as proficiently and why they don't hold as much muscle mass. But there's a lot of things that you can absolutely do to improve that stuff. But that's also the double-edged sword that we have when it comes to cancer. Because those things are good at encouraging new cell growth, fresh skin cells, fresh ligament and cartilage cells. But it also proliferates all cells. So if you have cells that are metastasized, it's like adding fuel to the fire, basically. So in a case like that, we want to strangle the living daylights out of it. And that's why a plant-based diet can be useful for that reason. It can be useful for that reason. Now, the way that I optimize you might be saying, well, how do you optimize yourself if you're plant-based then? Well, part of what I do, that your body, if you are healthy and you're not inflamed, you weight training and you're sleeping well, you will maintain pretty good levels of IGF-1 and growth hormone in your body regardless, even if you're plant-based. So I'm pulling all those levers, but then as a bonus, I'm adding in strategic bursts of tesamorelin and ipamorelin blend, which is a growth hormone releasing peptide combination. So I'm optimizing that stuff from the get-go anyway. And so when you optimize the growth hormone levels, you'll notice, like I said, you look younger. It's essentially anti-aging. You will look younger across the board. Now, during a time like cancer, that's when you want to basically bring this down low. You want to remove the fuel source from the cancer cells, which is exactly why doing a plant-based approach can be so useful. But on top of that plant-based approach, we don't want to be feeding those cells with too much glucose, too much sugar. And so I would say that, yeah, it's probably wise to not be eating a ton of fruit sugar and a ton of starchy carbohydrates, even if they are whole food. I would say it's better to kind of keep that low, because you want to throw everything, including the kitchen sink, at this. And so that's where a plant predominant ketogenic diet. And so this is where I got to tell you now, this is where you would absolutely want help from someone like myself, because that's such a nuanced diet protocol. It will be quite challenging to put together initially, but it's possible. And the thing is you then have to cross-reference food sensitivities to it, and also how your gut handles all this plant fiber. So there are multiple variables you need to pay attention to here. It is important that you address those things. But generally speaking, plant-based diet or plant-predominant diet, high in sort of healthy whole food fats, monounsaturated omega-3 based, low in saturated fat, and low in animal-based proteins that stimulate IGF-1. So that is a huge lever to pull if you did that. I would say that depending on the cancer, depending on the stage, if it was early stages, I think doing things like blueberries and blackberries after a workout isn't a bad thing. I think adding a little bit of different types of juicing protocols into your repertoire isn't a bad thing. I think there's a time and place for those things, but I would definitely be doing the plant-focused or Mediterranean with high omega-3s as the base. And then obviously little strategic amounts of low glycemic index carbohydrates. So if you go to ChatGPT and search, give me the top 10 list of low glycemic index carbohydrates that also have anti-cancer properties. Because remember, we're not just eating for calories and macros. We're eating for the package. Your food comes as a food matrix. A food matrix is multiple levers. You know, for example, Himalayan tartary buckwheat powder is a supplement I'm a huge fan of because it pulls multiple levers. It does multiple things. Now, you might be adding in, like I mentioned, some wild blueberries. That anti-inflammatory effect from the sort of antioxidant-rich foods, because remember, the darker the pigment of the food, the more antioxidant-rich it is. That helps bring down a lot of the stuff that fuels cancer growth. So I would say that you can strategically add those in, but you would need to just be very intentional about low glycemic index that also have a high bang for buck with other anti-cancer properties in them. So that's key. That's key. Now, I would say beyond that, stacking in some aggressive intermittent fasting cycles and combining some intelligent juice fasting protocols on top. So I do think that there's a lot of good research that suggests that intermittent fasting is another very powerful tool for strangulating cancer, basically. Because think about it. When you eat, your body is going to break that food down into glucose in your bloodstream. And one of the most powerful things you can do is essentially just not fuel that at all. Not fuel that at all. You have some fat stores your body can leverage for energy. And I would say between the body fat that you already have and getting out and walking in the sunlight, because remember, movement and light are like auxiliary power supplies. So you're not just dependent on calories. So if you stack that trifecta together, you'll feel like your energy's decent, you're not starting to crash, but you're getting that fasting in, which basically pulls all that glucose out of your system, and that absence of that fuel is what starts to help the body start to terminate those cells. Like they don't continue to replicate and grow. So again, and I would even say anywhere between a 24 and a 72-hour fast, I do think it's absolutely important to get some guidance with this. You know, you want to make sure that you are adding in trace minerals with your hydration. You want to make sure that you're adding in the right base approach and you're doing the right things in conjunction with this so you don't burn yourself out, basically. Really important. Now, above the fasting, like the next level to that, is juice fasting, like a juice protocol. So there is a guy that I followed for years. I really like his stuff. And his name is Lou Corona. So Lou Corona he's been plant-based for 30 years. And he's in his 70s, and the guy looks like he's in his 40s. He's very, very young, vital-looking, vibrant. He's clearly very healthy. You can look at him and just see he's just emanating health. His skin is very sort of rich of collagen and color. His hair is thick. He's got good muscle tone for a guy in his 70s. His eyes are really clear, like the whites of his eyes are clear. He doesn't have bags under his eyes. So I say this because he has been raw vegan for decades, which for those of you guys who don't know, being plant-based is one thing. Being raw vegan is another thing entirely. It requires a lot of skill, but it's possible. It's possible. Me and Lauren my wife have done periods of little bursts of that before. It is possible. And if you have the right recipes and things, you can do it. Now, one of the things that he does with his juice fasting protocols is there's a juice called Lemon Ginger Blast. So if you search Lou Corona Lemon Ginger Blast, I would suggest that you get a bunch of those ingredients from the store and you just juice as much as possible. Get an Omega juicer and do it from home and just make it part of your routine. It's high. I mean, you can load it up with it's things like cucumber, celery, ginger, turmeric, lemons, green apple, kale microgreens, broccoli microgreens, all of that cilantro, Italian parsley, all of these types of things from that lemon ginger blast from Lou Corona is a lot of nutrient-rich profiles that really help stunt cancer proliferation. And this was one of the recipes that I got my guy to do when he got that diagnosis back that the cancer cells were dead. So we were juicing that a lot, and we were stacking in intermittent fasting. So basically what he was doing was he would do a period of, say, a 24-hour fast where he's just drinking mineral water, and then we would do a day of just juice fasting where we would push in a ton of the juice, and then we would do a day where he's then refueling on calories to sustain his weight, to sustain his energy, to sustain his muscle mass. And then we would toggle back to a full-blown proper fasting day, and then a juice fasting day, and sometimes we would push it out to 2 days or more, and then we would do sort of a refeeding system of whole food, plant predominant, omega-3 rich fats as a ketogenic base. And I'm telling you, guys, it was powerful. It was really, really powerful. I would also say that it's very important that you think about pesticides, herbicides, and fungicides. So I have my show notes up here right now because there's obviously so many different areas to discuss. And this will come up at a later point because there is a number 10 is environmental toxins. So I'm not going to go into too much detail now, but we definitely want to make sure that we're looking at the so-called dirty dozen. If you search dirty dozen vegetable list, you want to make sure that any of those supplements, or any of those foods, I should say, are organic and you wash them thoroughly. You wash them thoroughly. I can't remember off the top of my head, but it's things that basically don't have a peel as well. So, like if a strawberry, for example, they typically spray strawberries very heavily. And because they don't have a peel, you're eating directly whatever's been coming in contact with them. So you need to use a good quality veggie wash. Typically, you can add in a white vinegar as a base. But if you just search like good organic vegetable wash, there's different ones you can get online. And you want to wash your produce regardless if it is organic or not, regardless. Because organic still does come with its own challenges, albeit it's probably just better in general than conventional. But we want to make sure that we're washing all our stuff. And like I said, you're locking in that dirty dozen to make sure that you're not taking in a bunch of those seemingly healthy foods, but they're like laden with pesticides. Did you know there was like a $300 million lawsuit by a groundsman towards Monsanto because he used Roundup to basically kill off all the weeds in this athletic track field at the high school that he worked at? And he got lymphomas and all sorts of issues. And they actually, in court, were able to connect it to his Roundup, glyphosate, Monsanto exposure. You don't get a $300 million settlement without having clear, definitive connections. So I say this because that Roundup, that chemical crap, that is literally what people spray on their gardens and vegetables. And so you got to be very, very mindful about that. So the dirty dozen, pay attention to it, lock it in, make sure you wash all your vegetables thoroughly. And like I said, those dietary tactics that I just gave you, with the juice fasting, the fasting days, and the refeeding day to kind of keep muscle mass established, and like the plant predominant or keto base with that monounsaturated omega-3 structure as the ketogenic component, the fat in the diet, is that is a absolutely potent breakdown right there. I can't tell you enough how effective that process would be for anyone stage 1 through stage 4. So that's the first thing. Now, the next thing is inflammation control. So in general, like I've mentioned, inflammation rears its head in different places. Inflammation isn't just mental stress. You know, if you have a high level of visceral fat, remember that fat around your organs in your midsection. So visceral fat is very inflammatory. And that's why it's such a troublesome thing. So what I would say is, for any of the guys that have that pot belly, that have that little bit of visceral fat, this is where making sure that you get out all the trans fats out of your diet, that you are in if depending on how much fat you need to lose, you want to be in some type of calorie deficit for fat loss, or at the very least right around maintenance, which will help your energy stay elevated enough where you can actually like walk and look after yourself, right? Like you want to be so zonked out and so lifeless you can't even move. That's obviously not ideal because we want to pump the circulatory system. We want to pump the lymphatic system through movement. But this is, again, where context matters. Because someone might say, well, I heard that peptides like tesamorelin were good for burning visceral fat. Should I use some tesamorelin? But what is the implication of you using a growth hormone releasing peptide? What did I just say before? I said growth hormone has its place. And in the right context, it's anti-aging. But it proliferates cell growth. And that can be good cells. But if someone already has cancer, that can magnify. That's why there's precautions around peptide use as it pertains to cancer. That's the main reason. Peptides don't cause cancer. But because they're so good at regenerating cellular health in the wrong environment, they might actually grow it because they're basically helping with all these other recovery processes. So again, it's this tightrope walk. It's a real tightrope walk. But I would say a way to determine, you might, I don't want to scare you into thinking, okay, well, I'm never going to take peptides in because if I have cancer, it's going to make them worse. As long as you get your blood work done, and if you don't have any immune system markers that are all elevated and crazy, then you're good. That's an indication that you don't have issues. So that's why, again, getting your immune system markers run is a good peace of mind. Because you can say, nothing is elevated, nothing is wrong, so I'm good to go. And I could use, some of these peptides that will help with growth hormone release because I don't have those elevated immune system markers, right? So and a lot of doctors won't tell you these things. They don't know any of this stuff, a lot of them. Now, there are some very good ones out there, but a lot of them don't have this sort of all-encompassing background knowledge around all these different systems. So visceral fat, we want to get it down. We want to improve your omega-3 index. One of the things in blood work that you can get run is your omega-3 to 6 to 9 index. And most people have a really wonky index where they have a lot of omega-6s in their diet. Seed oils. It's like if you just do peanut butter and canola oil, that type of stuff, that is omega-6 based inflammatory fats. So this is, again, why not all calories are created equal. So I would want you to swap out your tablespoons of peanut butter, and I would want you to rotate it for, say, nutso nut butter. Or just replace it with a good monounsaturated omega-3 based fat. Because when you can improve that omega-3 to 6 to 9 ratio, especially with the omega-3s, good quality, like Blueprint extra virgin olive oil, for example, very high in polyphenols. My favorite. So that is, again, an example of how not all calories are created equal. You could get 100 calories of Skippy peanut butter, or you could use 100 calories of nutso, nut butter, which is a 7 nut and seed blend, and very, very different omega-3 ratios, yet it's the same amount of calories. So remember, we are not just focusing on calories. We're focusing on the package deal, the food matrix. What does it come with that could be exacerbating these issues? So again, that's why I like to focus on omega-3s in a plant predominant sense, because that's very good for that omega-3 to 6 to 9 ratio. Another component is fiber intake. There is real data around this, by the way, around fiber intake being very, very good for all types of digestive cancer prevention. That's why I'm not a big fan. I'll be real with you. I'm not a huge fan of the carnivore diet for that reason. Like, I do think that it has a use case for certain people. Like, if someone's got a lot of, this is the irony though, if someone's got a lot of digestive issues or an autoimmune reaction, a carnivore or sort of animal-based diet can be useful because you're removing a lot of that insoluble fiber, which if the gut's not healthy, it's like just sandpaper. It's just going to tear you up more. Because some people, if their gut's not ideal, you've got to run a gut rehab protocol, right? It's so important that you do that and you don't just settle for your current situation. But by removing a lot of that insoluble fiber, you get a bit of digestive relief because you don't have all that fiber your body's having to like break down and process and metabolize. So you might think, oh, I feel so much better. Like my digestion it's easier typically. But what I would tell you is rather than just removing the thing, rehab the system. So I have a whole episode on gut health. Go listen to it. I talk about it from all the way from your oral microbiome, your mouth, all the way through the different systems in your body, your digestive enzymes, your stomach acid quality and concentration, your digestive tract, your intestines, the flora, the probiotics, the prebiotics. And so I say all this because fiber is a very powerful system as well. Now, I will tell you that if you've come from a place where you're not consuming a lot of fiber, you need to taper into it and not go nuts. Don't go crazy. If you go crazy, you're going to feel really bloated and you won't feel good. I would be doing a gut rehab protocol, absolutely. So, and again, this is why getting into my business athlete council or getting some one-on-one stuff would be a very good idea for you because I can help you titrate and fine-tune all of these different systems. Because I will tell you, like, if you want to really do this well, like I said, you're going to have to probably do a Mediterranean or plant-predominant diet. What is that? It's a lot of fiber. And so you've got to get your gut right. You have to get your gut right. And I would say that once you've done that, the fiber intake is a very powerful tool for this. Now, I would tell you, even if you don't have issues, this is also why getting more soluble and insoluble fiber into your daily routine is so important. So I would be adding, eat the rainbow. I always say eat the rainbow every day. Make sure that you're getting green, red, orange. You're doing, so insoluble fiber is typically your green fiber. It's going to be your cucumbers, your zucchinis, your broccoli microgreens, your kale microgreens, that type of stuff. That's your insoluble fiber. Your soluble fiber is things that are a little bit easier on the gut. It's a lot of the fruits, it's the blueberries, it's the blackberries. It's things like sweet potato or butternut squash. That type of stuff can be broken down. It's soluble in the digestive system. You want both. You want both of those in your system because that's what it creates like a synergistic effect. But definitely the gut repair is paramount. So it starts in the mouth. You've got to make sure you remove all the Listerine and all the garbage. You know, if you're consuming Crest toothpaste and Listerine, you need to use something like Riven mouthwash, like a prebiotic mouthwash that doesn't have a bunch of alcohol to kill off all the bacteria. Remember, some bacteria is important. It's useful. You want to use toothpaste like Gutology or Revitin, which is like a multi-mineral one. You want to add in digestive enzymes to help break down the food. This helps break down the fiber you're taking in. A good quality digestive enzyme. By the way, if you want supplement suggestions for all this stuff, like I said, reach out. Let me know. Get into my Business Athlete Council. This is where I talk about all this stuff in detail. I'd be doing the baking soda stomach acid test. Go to YouTube and check for that. Baking soda stomach acid test. And you check that. Because if you have low stomach acid concentrations, that's an issue in and of itself. That's probably why you're getting some of the bloating and gas issues. Because if your stomach acid quality sucks, your body's not even going to properly dissolve down the food. You will often see that when there's like partially digested food in someone's stool. That's a key indicator. And then obviously all the way to like your gut flora, thinking of your gut like a garden. We want all the different types of good probiotics. Seed Symbiotic, for example, is a good tool to be adding in the rotation to help create like that sort of diverse microbiome that allows you to break down all this fiber and stuff you're consuming. Remember, we aren't just what we eat. We're what we absorb. And so you can be eating a lot of healthy stuff. You can be taking a lot of oral supplements. But if you're not breaking it down and absorbing, it's kind of useless, right? So definitely thinking about gut repair is massive. And then obviously just the last component of that is thinking about any of the anti-inflammatory foods and juicing protocols. So it's going to be things like ginger, turmeric, garlic. Garlic's very good for immune systems. So cutting up whole garlic, letting it sit, crush it up or cut it up, let it sit for a few minutes, and then consume it. Once you cut it up, and that process of cutting it up triggers this compound called allicin. And allicin is very, very good for bolstering your immune system. So I would tell you that even just go to ChatGPT and say, give me the top 20 foods that are the best for anti-inflammatory effect. But it's a lot of the things that I consume on a daily basis. It's a lot of those things. I mean, just the stuff I just mentioned right now. Those are some of the foundational things. And then obviously you're adding in the juicing. You're adding in all these beneficial things which all help bring down that inflammation in the system. Now, another component is stress and immune system surveillance. So I would tell you that one of the biggest issues that I think for a lot of people is their inability to manage chronic stress. You need to listen to me very carefully what I'm about to say. You can do all the right things when it comes to your diet and like pour in all the antioxidants and do all the juicing and all the fancy stuff we talked about. But if you are a highly strung OCD manic overthinker and you don't practice mindfulness and you don't practice setting boundaries and you don't practice just chilling the F out at times, that stress on your nervous system is going to tank your immune system. So what I often notice is that people that are more mentally stressed, they sort of ruminate and marinate on challenges. They tend to get sick more often. They get either sick or injured more. Their body is more susceptible. Why? Because their immune system is consistently being pulverized. So if you get a lot of aches and pains and injuries and or you get lots of colds and flus and things, or your digestion is very sensitive, and you're constantly having to run gut rehab protocols. Part of it is you need to learn how to chill out. And that's a whole topic in and of itself. I literally have done an episode on chronic stress and nervous system mastery. You go and listen to that, because I dug into that one in a big way. And there's way too much to cover in this one. But that is probably one of the most valuable topics, because outside of diet, there's different ways to mitigate stress. So things like sauna, walking in the sunlight, really focusing on optimizing your sleep pattern. Like, sleep is a huge stress modulator. When they looked at in research at night shift workers, people that work night shifts, their chances of cancer dramatically increase. Dramatically. And nothing else changes. So the diet's the same. Their training is the same. But they go from sleeping like a normal person to a night shift, and that really has a negative effect on immune system. So I would say in general, morning light, afternoon light to time melatonin, getting 12 to 15,000 steps per day, making sure that you're doing my sensory wind down process at nighttime, where you have different senses. Your sensory input needs to down regulate like a transmission of a vehicle. So at night, I turn off all the harsh interior light, and we just use Himalayan salt lamps and candlelit diffusers. We also, so that's your sort of your visual cortex. The auditory cortex is what you hear. So we'll basically do some relaxing spa music, either playing it through Spotify or some relaxing like nursery rhymes for the kids. And that's winding down that auditory system in the body, which is a big one. And then we will tap into the olfactory system, which is your sense of smell. So I'll diffuse a lot of parasympathetic inducing essential oils. Like lavender is a good one. Lavender is great. Ylang-ylang, blends from Young Living like Joy or Stress Away are really good for bringing down that sympathetic nervous system dominance, which is not good. We don't want that. So I would say diffusing the essential oils on top of the relaxing spa music, on top of just getting your house in the Zen zone with like the lighting, Himalayan salt lamps, candlelit diffusers, that type of thing. And the last thing is tactile, so your sense, your touch. So dropping the air temperature down to like 64 to 66 degrees. If you use those different sensory downshifting processes and you connect with your family and just read a little storybook or just like give each other light massages to wind down your system, that is such a good way to wind down the whole system as a whole and get you into a very relaxed state that helps with better sleep cycles. Sleep is like a metabolic reset, and I would definitely be focusing on that as a key foundational principle, purely based on what I was saying about night shift workers often have a much higher rate of cancers. So straight away we know that there's something happening there that you must factor in. Really, really important. Now, outside of that, it's going to that's why I'm such a big fan of walking, because walking is very therapeutic on the nervous system. You know, you don't have to do hard training all the time. I think doing some weight training to hold muscle mass is really important. But I would be telling you probably 10 to 20 minute workouts every second day, and you're just stimulating the muscle. That whole concept of stimulate, don't annihilate, right? You're just doing it to retain the metabolically active tissue, but you're not compounding stress. I would be adding in niacin sauna detox protocol, or at the very least, sauna every day. So sauna for about 20 minutes every day. Now, you can even get these sort of pop-up at-home sauna little singular rooms now. There are some affordable ones. You can get a sauna blanket. So a brand Higher Dose has a sauna blanket. I would tell you that that's better than nothing. It's absolutely better than nothing. So I would be doing a sauna every day with a sauna blanket. Or if you can get into a proper sauna, even better. And I'd be hitting that every single day for 20 minutes. Because there's a lot of good research around heat exposure and hormetic stress and how it affects how it basically strengthens your immune system, and it improves blood flow and oxygen transportation through the body. So your body's just like really good at regenerating itself. But what I would say is, if you wanted to go further than that, search for Dr. U, so Dr. YU, niacin sauna detox protocol. This is a great system. I've run it multiple times. It is intense. It does take a bit of work. It's a little bit uncomfortable, but I would tell you that it is profound. So part of the reason why this sauna protocol was created in the first place was that after 9/11, so after the Twin Towers came down, there was a lot of first responders that were getting all types of cancers, all types of issues, really bad, like early onset dementia, neurological issues, cancers, you name it. And Dr. Yu created this niacin sauna detox protocol, and it had a really powerful effect. And I've even got, I've had people that have run this, and what it does essentially is it helps pull heavy metals out of your system. So that's where they think that the cancer was being proliferated by, with all the heavy metal exposure. So think about it. When the Twin Towers came down, you're exposed to tons and tons of just toxic dust, all kinds of like metal particles in this dust that you're breathing in. Now, when you get that chemical nightmare in you, that's a lot of heavy metal burden. And so heavy metals in the body typically come in the form of, like, obviously that type of situation. But outside of that, they come in the form of medications, vaccines, and just over time, a lot of processed foods and junk foods and pesticides and herbicides, just environmental exposures in general. So we run a niacin or sauna detox protocol to basically chelate and pull all those heavy metals out of your system. They enter your digestive tract, being basically embedded in your cells, and you use a binder like bentonite clay or activated charcoal to bind them up, and then you poop them out. And there's a whole process to it. So niacin sauna detox protocol, I would say it's worth running that. And even if you don't want to run that, because it can be a bit uncomfortable with all the flushing niacin, even just do the sauna, like I said, 20 minutes every day. I think, and what I would even do as a bonus is I would do like some light stretching and mobility, and even some light yoga in there if you have room. So if you have room, almost like a little bit of light hot yoga, very, very calming on the nervous system, and just helps with mobility and helps stretch out the body, which is better than you just kind of being really static and not moving. Like I said, remember, movement is a key part of priming the pump, so you feel better energetically. Otherwise, if you're just laying down all day, you will progressively feel worse and worse, and your lymphatic system won't pump, and that's like the sewer lines of your body, and that will back up with sewage, and that's not good. And that's what happens with most people. They just become progressively more sedentary, they don't move, they don't train, and everything just gets backed up, and they just accumulate toxicity. So it's not good. So I definitely think that is a big lever to pull. I would say doing meditation and breath work. So a lot of breath work is very useful. Lots of slow, controlled nasal box breathing is an awesome thing to do. And like I said, getting out and walking in the light, walking in nature every day. I would be out walking outside multiple times every day, just calm, therapeutic, nasal breathing while I walk. Such a useful thing. So I would say in general, optimizing sleep, niacin sauna detox protocol, the cleaning the diet up is going to help reduce down a lot of this immune surveillance. And then even getting, with your blood work, you would look at any of the antibody reactions you're having. So if you were having thyroid autoimmune issues, we would pinpoint that and adjust that so you don't have that inflammation happening, right? The other thing is getting that food sensitivity done. Because like I was saying, if you have a sensitivity to something, that is going to drive up that immune system response. And it's not that food is causing cancer, but it's saying at a certain point the body's trying to deal with so much accumulative stress, it breaks. So you want to try to reduce down as many of those variables as possible. Really, really important. Now, another component, and I kind of touched on this before, but was sleep and circadian biology. So like I said, I've got a whole episode on sleep. I talked about those four sensory sort of transmission parts of the engine to wind down your nervous system. But a couple of other things that I think are useful to note is melatonin. So melatonin is actually an antioxidant and an immune modulator. And so I, for that reason, take a little microdose of melatonin every day, 1 milligram. There's a lot of dosing suggestions with melatonin. I personally would rather just take a little microdose to get the therapeutic effect, but I don't want the sort of full-blown sedation feeling. And because a lot of people, when they take melatonin, they take too much, and it creates that grogginess they feel the next day. I think you can avoid all of that by just doing a little tiny microdose, quarter of a milligram to 1 milligram every day. Because again, it's a master antioxidant. And if it does help improve REM and deep sleep cycles, what was I saying about sleep, right? Sleep is very, very anti-inflammatory. It's like a metabolic reset, really important. Adding on to that, I talk about red light, so like a Hooger red light lamp, Himalayan salt lamps, candlelit diffusers. When I say candlelit diffusers, basically a lot of essential oil diffusers have different light settings. And so, you can turn it blue, you can turn it green, you can turn it purple, but you can turn it as like a sort of orange candle-lit setting. That's what I mean. And you want to reduce down all that blue light emission. So bright blue light from your phone, from computer screens, from TV screens. Put blue light blocking filters on your laptop, on your computer, on your phone. If you can do one on your television, do that. Because that blue light also, it has an issue that proliferates these problems we face, which is in part why people that do night shifts have these issues. Because it's not just the fact that you're staying up at nighttime, it's the blue light exposure that typically comes as an association with you working a night shift. So very, very important. The other thing that I would say is deep sleep is the repair window. So we really want to look at maximizing that deep sleep potential. Everyone's a bit different here. I find a couple of sort of rules of thumb. If you are eating too close to bedtime, that will affect your deep sleep scores because your body's still breaking down food. So your core temperature is still elevated. So we need to get that core temperature down more, which means you need to eat 3 to 4 hours before bed. And I would encourage you to get to bed a bit earlier, so really prioritize sleep for that reason. But I would also say things like melatonin, but also things like theanine serine, magnesium biglycinate, like higher doses of glycine. Glycine is a great supplement. I like that. And Tulsi tea. So Tulsi tea helps bring down cortisol response too, by the way. So I would be doing some of those things, and I'd be winding down and having that dinner process earlier if you can. Now, a couple of other things here is, we sort of touched on the gut microbiome at the start. I've got a whole episode on that, so I would say dig into that in more detail. But remember, your immune system is essentially like formed in your digestive system. Like your gut and your brain chemistry and your immune system, they are all connected. It's like a multi-sensory system. And most people don't understand that, which is very often what happens is if you get sick, if like you have an injury or you have to run an oral antibiotic, when you run that oral antibiotic, if you don't repopulate your gut and rehab your gut well, it essentially, the oral antibiotic might get rid of the infection that you had, like the tooth infection, but it's going to destroy all the good bacteria that you had in your digestive system. And what happens there is then you're not absorbing food properly. And beyond that, a lot of your serotonin, which is a neurochemical that helps you feel good, that is metabolized and housed in your gut. And so now all of a sudden you're having all these imbalances with neurochemicals and different things in the body. And so I would definitely tell you that really prioritizing gut health as a way to keep absorption levels and brain chemistry really good is very, very important. So in summary, like I mentioned, your fiber intake and a diverse range of fibers. Eat a range of different foods. Don't just eat nothing but broccoli. Get a rotation in, a rotation of greens, a rotation of reds, a rotation of orange. Add in, microdose in some fermented foods. Fermented foods, it will take a little bit of acclimation, but those things, sauerkraut, kimchi, natto, miso, add all of that stuff in little microdoses to allow your body to acclimate to it. It's almost like an inoculation. And then things high in polyphenols, right? So it's going to be things like the Blueprint extra virgin olive oil. That's a great little addition. I'd be adding in a serving of that every single day. And then beyond that, like I just mentioned, your micronutrients, all those vitamins and minerals. We're not just eating for calories. So that's where, like I said, broccoli microgreens, kale microgreens, broccoli sprouts. I would be doing broccoli sprouts every single day. Very, very high in sulforaphane, like I mentioned. And I'm repeating a lot of stuff here, guys, because I want to drill it home to you. First of all, I want to drill it home, but I also want you to realize that all these systems overlap each other. So even if I'm talking about one thing, that benefit will apply somewhere else too, which is why, I might bring it up 3 or 4 times. There's a reason for that. I'm drilling that home into your psyche. Now, another part of the cancer stuff is your mitochondrial health. So think of your mitochondria like the batteries of your cells. And as you age, those batteries lose their charge. And that basically makes you feel more tired. Your energy's low. Like your body just won't work as efficiently. You feel more tired. Your metabolism sort of goes down. It's essentially it's what aging is suboptimal mitochondrial health. Now, there obviously, again, when I'm going to repeat myself, light and movement help with mitochondrial health. So walking outside in the light, rebounding, getting on your air bike, but getting out in the light every day, multiple times per day. So I'd be doing light and movement and priming the pump multiple times through the day, even if you're just 5 to 10 minutes. Remember, something is better than nothing. Now, things like I mentioned, like rebounding, skipping, are all good for mitochondrial health. I would say that another big one is just exercise in general, weight training. Some zone 2 cardio is good. Zone 2 I like because it's a little bit therapeutic on the system. It's not a ton of extra stress compounding. So like I would typically tell you to shy away from high intensity interval training or high intensity resistance training, like CrossFit type stuff, because that's a lot of just accumulative stress on the system. I would be focusing on nice, slow, intentional resistance training, weight training, and then stacking in a lot of just walking out in the light and some zone 2 cardio each week. Really useful. And the reason why resistance training is so important, people miss this. They don't train. And the muscle is very metabolically active. Remember, like I was saying at the start, muscle mass makes you more insulin sensitive. Muscle mass helps you metabolize the sugar in your bloodstream way more effectively. What did I say about sugar in your bloodstream in terms of cell senescence and fuel? So if you have bigger muscles that just suck up all that nutrients and help assist your body in the metabolism of all of that stuff, that's a good thing. So that's why muscle mass and retaining muscle mass is so freaking important. You don't have to be jacked, but you do need to stimulate these big muscle groups, legs and back. Definitely the ones that I opt for. In fact, I typically do full body workouts if I was in this position. So full body workouts 2 to 4 times a week, maybe every second day, doing 15 to 20 minutes. Not even big, long, arduous sessions either. We've got to be very, very strategic and intentional with the way that we create this overload so you're not burning yourself out. So the weight training is key. That kind of ties into movement in general. Like I mentioned, movement, walking, NEAT, so non-exercise activity thermogenesis, is just low-grade movement. So walking, rucking, but I would say in a case like this, walking is going to be better. But movement in general, so like vacuuming your house, sweeping your driveway, Like some of that stuff I find is useful because you're actually doing something productive. Kicking a soccer ball around with your child, right? Going to take a walk with your spouse. That type of stuff I think is really useful. It helps with insulin sensitivity, like I mentioned. Obviously, all like low-grade movement is calming on the nervous system, so it helps reduce inflammation. And especially if you're walking outside in the light, that's going to help with that vitamin D intake, which in turn helps with that enhanced immune system function. Again, it's all tied together, isn't it? Vitamin D. So vitamin D deficiency is common. So I would be getting that checked in your blood work. And I would be taking potentially a vitamin D3 plus K2 supplementation. I personally take 10,000 IUs per day because I want to keep that immune system locked in. I want to keep that brain chemistry locked in. And I want to make sure that my sex hormones and every other system in the body is reaping the benefit of having that upstream precursor hormone optimal. Right? Most people, they might fall in the normal range when it comes to their vitamin D. The range is about 30 through to 100. But what if you're 31? That's still garbage. That's not good. We want you up to be around about 80 to 85. So again, remember, normal doesn't equal optimal. And a big part of what I do professionally is I look at those Goldilocks zones. So if someone goes to Function Health and gets their blood work done, it's not just enough to get that done and be like, okay, well, everything is normal, I'm good. Do you just want to be average? Is that what you set out in life to do, to just be average? Or do you want to be a phenom? Do you want to be a category of one? Do you want to be a true business athlete? Because that's where you get into my rotation and we get you into those Goldilocks zones. Really, really important. Now, beyond that, we're almost done. This is a longer episode, but I'm throwing everything in the freaking kitchen sink at this. The environmental toxins. Like I said, you have to clean up your environment. So BPAs and plastics, you want to use glass, mason jars and glassware for your food. So get the BPAs out of your system. Chewing gum, high in plastics. So use a brand like Refresh. If you search Refresh healthy chewing gum on Amazon, that's one that I use. It's made from a tree sap, but it doesn't have a bunch of microplastics in it. Phthalates, pesticides, fragrances, household chemicals. So use essential oils as a deodorant or perfume. There are a lot of things that you can change in this area. You don't want to be using Tide Pods and Clorox wipes and Dawn dish soap and all that conventional stuff, because all that stuff is like a chemical nightmare, and that will potentially have a real effect on your system. Remember, like I was saying, that groundskeeper got I think it was a $300 million lawsuit won because of all the chemical exposure that he had absorbing through his skin and into his lungs while he breathed and gave him cancer. And again, that's what happens with these 9/11 first responders. So niacin sauna detox protocol can help with that environmental toxin load, but you also want to remove it. So the dirty dozen, making sure that you're not adding in a bunch of chemical-laden vegetables, or you use a good quality veggie wash. So important. And beyond that, looking at all your cosmetics. If you're a lady and you're using makeup, you make sure your makeup range is clean. There's a lot of clean ones out there. It's not that hard to sort of figure that out. But I would be opting for a good brand that we use as the Young Living brand. So the Young Living brand has a range. They have laundry stuff. They have kitchen stuff. They have all these like good products that you can swap that are clean and don't have these chemical reactions that are going to just trigger all kinds of bizarre cellular mutations. That's what it is. It's like a bizarre cellular freaking mutation. We don't want that. So environmental toxins, clean it up. Make sure that you don't have, like I said, even like the type of clothing that you have. Go for like bamboo or cotton, bamboo or organic cotton. Don't wear a bunch of synthetic chemical stuff. All of this adds up. Antiperspirant deodorants, colognes. Those are some of the biggest culprits. Shaving cream. So you just got to go through this process. And again, that's why I always say, getting into my business athlete council or something, it's a process. Like it will take some time to kind of clean these things up. And obviously if time is against you, you just have to move fast. And it can be stressful, but that's just part of your journey. And you can do this. You can overcome this. Believe that. And so like just wrapping up that metal exposure, you know, you got the heavy metal stuff, so the niacin sauna detox protocol, you basically wanted to like make sure that all your organ systems are processing everything well. And so in blood work, looking at ALT and AST, like liver enzymes, just checking all your organs functions in the blood work is a place to start. That's it. I would just say that's what you want to focus on. Now, beyond that, I would say any type of supplementation. Did you notice that like the supplementation is sort of towards the end? Because I didn't want you to think that you just take a bunch of supplements and that's just going to solve all your problems. But what I am going to say is it's worth exploring some of these. So get ready, get your pen out. So the first thing, vitamin D, higher dose vitamin D. Omega-3s, ideally like a double dose of omega-3s. Curcumin, sulforaphane from broccoli sprouts or in supplement form. Green tea extract. NAC, which is N-acetylcysteine, which is the precursor to glutathione, or glutathione, ideally injectable. Melatonin, microdose of melatonin. Himalayan tartary buckwheat powder. Vitamin B17. Ivermectin and fenbendazole. Now, those are ones that have been very useful. The ivermectin and fenbendazole has been very useful for people. But there's a lot of misinformation around it, and Big Pharma does not really want you to know that. So I say this because it's worth trying these things, or it's worth learning about them. I'm never going to come in here and tell you and say, hey, take a bunch of ivermectin and fenbendazole and some sulforaphane and some curcumin and some glutathione, and it's going to cure your issues. That would be irresponsible of me. But what I am going to tell you is you do some of these things on top of your diet, on top of the stress mitigation and the movement and the light, and you are setting your body up to be superhuman. Super freaking human. Now, there's other things like peptides and bioregulators, but I would typically be wary of these in an instance where cancer is an issue. There are immune-enhancing peptides like thymosin alpha-1 or thymolin or thymogen. So these help with the thymic gland. Your thymus, as you age, you lose thymus function, and that's what basically makes your immune system become weaker. Think of an old person, when they get a cold or flu, they really get it, right? Like a flu can kill them. Whereas with a young person, it won't, typically. So the thymus gland is an overlooked system. So, like I mentioned, thymosin alpha-1, thymogen, or thymolin are peptides that potentially can help. Now, there are other peptides that people might suggest. Again, you have to do your own research. Mitochondrial peptides like MOTS-c and SS31. NAD, but especially MOTS-c and SS31, those are mitochondrial-derived peptides. And what was I saying earlier about mitochondrial health in terms of that needing to be more bolstered to help with these issues? So I would say that those are some areas to focus on. I'd be looking at that. But in general, for me, I would if I was telling you what I was going to take, I'd probably take all of that stuff. But if I had to choose, it would be something like ivermectin and fenbendazole. It would be glutathione. It would be curcumin, berberine, vitamin D, and omega-3s. So berberine is another one. And I use berberine on a daily basis because it's got good blood glucose stabilizing effects, and it's good for lipid profiles too. So you can see here, if you take all of those mechanics and you apply them, the good thing about knowing this, guys, is that this is going to make you healthier across the board. You don't have to be dealing with cancer to warrant the incorporation of a lot of these things and see massive positive effect as a business athlete. A lot of these things I actually do. I actually add them in, I sort of cycle them in and out because there's such a positive net effect. Now, the last thing I want to leave you with, I will tell you that you can do all of these things, and sometimes when it's your time, it's your time. But I definitely believe in the power of prayer and belief. The biology of belief. The biology of prayer and the biology of belief. If you can get around people that remind you that you can do this and help you when you're feeling low and pick you up, and you are constantly living into that future version of yourself that's healthy, that's cancer-free, and truly believes that, I would say that that's probably the most powerful thing that you can ever do. I genuinely mean that. I really do think if you are able to truly convince yourself that you are going to make it through this, and you're going to see your children grow up, and you're going to live this long life, and to be on that rocking chair of life, watching the sun go down one day, older and gray. If you truly envision that and feel that in every bone in your body, and you think about it every day, and you pray on that, and you talk about it in a positive light, and you just pour beautiful gestures into other people, do good by other people, compliment people often, do nice things for other people every day. Every day. I would tell you 2 to 5 people every day. Reach out to 2 to 5 people every day and pour some positive comments, some positive gestures, some love and light to them every day. Hug your family every day. Hug and kiss your family every single day. Extended embrace. Hug them for 5 minutes. There is something about the biology of belief, something about the biology of prayer, something that as it pertains to consciousness, and how our energy, the energy that we bring, sets a frequency. And that frequency literally starts to manifest our physical reality. You know, I'm a science-based guy. I like the science stuff. I like the tactics. But I'd be very naive to say that that wasn't an inherent part of the miracle. And so, even if you don't have cancer, obviously I want you to use this, and please share this with people that need it. If there was ever a way you could repay me, is to share this with someone that needs it, or when you see me post it online, you let people know. Because the unfortunate thing is that a lot of people will not know this stuff, and they will pass away. And now there's children out there that lost their mother or father. And that's tragedy. But also, when it's your time, it just is your time. And that's just part of this life, man. So, I just wanted to end on that positive note, because we can talk tactics all day, but it really does come back to that biology of belief and that mindset. Go out there, be the best version of yourself, man. Take all these episodes and use them. I do this out of a labor of love, because I genuinely have seen how much it's changed my life. I've seen how these protocols have helped other people with cancer in massive ways and miracles. And I want that ripple effect to go out there for you and for everyone that you love and care about. So you can be that lighthouse. You can be that example. You know, we always think, I'm just one person. What can I do? I can't change the world. It starts with you, my friend. It starts with you. Because if you don't, then who's going to do it? You have to step up to the plate. So go out there today, implement these tactics, have that unwavering belief that you can create a better life for yourself. Visualize it, see it, feel it. Feel it in every cell of your body. And go out there and create that business athlete.